Are you looking for a memorable getaway for your family that's packed with adventure? Look no further than Lake Erie. Powder Hook, in partnership with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, has all the resources you need to plan your adventure to the walleye capital of the world. The best part is, you don't have to be an experienced angler or own a boat to have a fantastic time on the water. While walleye are the main attraction, Lake Erie also offers excellent fishing for yellow perch, trout, steelhead, salmon, and bass. The options are endless, and there's so much to explore on Lake Erie. Knowledgeable and friendly fishing guides are eager to serve you. Whether you want to hire a charter, secure a seat on a headboat, fish from the shore, ice fish, or do a DIY trip on your own boat, all these options are at your disposal with a bit of planning and preparation. Find everything you need at powderhook.com. That's powderhook.com. We know what's biting and can help you enjoy a wonderful fishing experience on Lake Erie.
This episode is brought to you in part by Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Green Chef is now offering 60% off and free shipping to listeners of the Waypoint Podcast Network by going to greenchef.com/waypoint60 and using the code waypoint60 at checkout. With Green Chef, meal prep is no longer boring. With pre-portioned and prepped ingredients, including pre-measured sauces, spices, and dressings, my time spent meal prepping is now cut in half. Flavorful recipes feature premium proteins, seasonal organic produce, and sustainably sourced seafood with a variety of dietary preferences like keto, fast and fit, and gluten-free. Green Chef now offers 10-minute lunches. Each week's menu includes 2 convenient, low-prep, and nutritious lunch recipes ready in just 10 minutes. No cooking required. Perfect for when you're pressed for time at work, getting ready for a fishing or hunting trip, or on the road. Go to greenchef.com/waypoint60 and use the code waypoint60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. That's greenchef.com/waypoint60, promo code waypoint60 for 60% off plus free shipping.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Hub podcast, and we have our Howlcast on this episode with John Stallone, where he's going to go through the Florida right to hunt and fish. I believe right to fish. Anyway, so in this episode, you will hear the legislative updates going on. You can see a lot of states that are introducing rights to hunt and fish. I know here in South Dakota, it's been proposed before. We're not too worried about it right now, so it's something that is not worth the effort of the commission, from what I've been told, and so that's not really getting messed with here in South Dakota. But many other states, it's a need, it's a necessity. So that is something we're seeing a lot more of. So enjoy this episode as John Stallone catches you up on some of the latest issues.
Hey everyone, just a few things before we get started. Use code HOWL, HOWL, at Onyx Maps. You get 20% off. Additionally, you can go to our website, howlforwildlife.org, go to the membership section. You can get a Howl for Wildlife membership. That's $30 a year. That really helps us. You get benefits for doing that. In the same membership section, you can get a Pope and Young Howl for Wildlife membership. It's the same price that you would get it at Pope and Young, $45 a year, except you get a Howl membership and a Pope and Young membership. Then you can also check out Go Hunt. You can get Pope and Young and Go Hunt, actually. But here's what Go Hunt's doing. You can get a Go Hunt Howl for Wildlife membership broken down into 2 different ways. The Explorer, which is all 50 states, plus everything in gear rewards. That's $49.99 a year. That's the same price they're offering. Or you can get the Go Hunt Insider subscription. Same price they're offering it, $149 a year. But you get the Howl for Wildlife membership also. With both of those, you get a special code to use at Go Hunt for a discount on everything that they sell. What Insider is, it's maps for all 50 states, plus it's filtering 2.0, draw odds, strategy articles, unit profiles, species breakdowns, and monthly giveaways. If you don't know what all that stuff is, just go to gohunt.com, check it out. It's a super good deal, but for both of these memberships, they're donating basically half of the price that you're paying to buy these back to Howl for Wildlife. Pretty incredible. That's it. Enjoy the episode.
All right, what's happening, everybody? Howlcast with Travis Thompson out of Florida, John Stallone, and I am Charles Whitlam. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What's happening? What are we doing? What are we doing today? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I think it's important because I feel like a lot of guys are still missing, and I say guys, but guys and girls missing the point here that what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the hunting community as a whole to actually be a community and stand up for one another, and also to realize that issues in one state may not seemingly affect you directly, but they do affect you in the grand scheme of things, and that it's important for you to be involved in all those issues, whether it's something that you partake in, whether it's in a state that you hunt in, or not. So that's kind of, I think, where I think we should set the stage before we talk specifically about Florida. Like, that's kind of where.
So why should people living in Oklahoma be concerned with something that's going on in Oregon, or vice versa, or even across borders into Canada? We've had some actions in Canada, and even Africa. Actually, we've had a few that are concerning Africa. They're really it's a bill, that's a New York bill, but
right, affects here,
but affects Africa, affects what's happening in Africa, affects the communities that are living there, and the hunters who go there, and the dollars that are spent. So why should people be concerned about what's going on in other states? Well, I did a little video the other day. I got some bullet points. This is basically what I was reading from, was a few bullet points here. And you guys step in whenever, but the first thing was non-resident dollars is super important to states and other countries. So since that's the case, it should be to those states or other countries' legislators as well. So don't feel like you shouldn't reach out to a legislator that's in a different state or district, because I think you have good reasons to reach out to those people,
and they have good reasons to listen to you.
Extremely good reasons. You come there and participate in that state's hunting or fishing activity, and it's more than just participation. You're spending a lot of money there. You're buying fuel, you're purchasing hotels, you're eating out, you're going to the grocery stores, you're going to the sporting goods stores, you're paying guides, you're paying outfitters. You're essentially it's a form of tourism, 100%. You are vital to that state or country's economy. Just the sale, just to put some numbers to it, and you can actually, maybe I'll put this link in the show notes. You can look at each state individually. I'll have to find Canada if that's even out there. But just for tags, hunting tags that are sold, tags alone, it's almost $500 million a year. So that's what I mean is non-residents who buy tags. It's like $411 million plus dollars a year. So that's huge. That's just the tags. Fishing is like 200, because they're less expensive. 200 and some 258 million, maybe something like that. But then when you get into everything that's bought for fishing,
I was gonna say, boats and tackle.
Yeah.
I mean,
it ends up being, plus there's more anglers. It ends up being the lion's share.
What's that saying for boat? Bring another 1,000.
Fantastic investment buying boats. Yeah, they increase. So then on the flip side, if you are that hunter or angler who is traveling to another state or another country, it's an investment in your future trips. It's an investment in yourself, because if Montana gets a right to hunt, or Florida gets a right to hunt and fish, that means you can continue, you can continue going there, and your kids can, and your grandkids, and so on and so forth. That's an investment to get those things in place. Whatever's going on in another state, that's an investment for you. The third thing was the North American model. It's not the Missouri model or the Oklahoma model or the Florida model. It's the North American model. And what I mean is the North American model of wildlife conservation. So to me, that says, well, we're all in this together as North Americans. So are we going to defend that? Are we going to promote that? Do we want that to continue to be utilized in our commissions and our departments, and have our legislators recognize that? Some legislators are unaware of what the North American model of wildlife conservation is. That was brought to my attention last year in Colorado. But that legislator had a really good experience with it. She said, man, through all these emails, I learned about this model of conservation that I really wasn't aware of before. And she really appreciated the emails. And then, of course, on the other side of us are anti-hunters, and they, of course, cross borders all the time. All the time. We see the same people, even in meetings. We'll see the same people in one state, like, hey, I just saw that person in this state, and now they're in this state, given their testimony or whatnot. So, and they do it on behalf of wildlife. They say they're fighting for wildlife, which is interesting, because much of what they do would actually have a detrimental effect on wildlife. So let's take out all predator hunting. We're going to have more predators, which need to eat more food, right? And what do they eat? They eat prey species. So the prey species are going to suffer. And then what happens when they run out of prey species in that area? Then they move, and then they get closer to humans. And I mean, there's just so many things wrong with that there.
They view it as if we just leave everything alone, the ship will right itself, that nature will take care of itself. And the reality of that is it may eventually happen after a bunch of vicious cycles of up and down for decades, maybe even hundreds of years. It might level itself out. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, when we had that kind of balance, when prey and predator can somewhat manage themselves without human interaction, there was only, a couple 100,000 people in the world, and now there's 8 billion people. So, and all the stuff that we build, and all, I've said this a million times, but our fingerprint is on everything. So the reality of that happening is, it's not even, I don't even think it's a question that it could happen, to be honest with you. So.
Well, I think it's anti-human. It's anti-human as well. Mm-hmm. It's not recognizing humans as being a part of this world and nature, which is strange. It really is. It's not recognizing that when we use our intellect and our and data and to make things better, that it actually does. And just look at the last 100 years of what's happened when humans were like, yo, we need to stop, all this market killing and wiping out these resources. So we need to bring them back. And what has happened? What has been a result of that? It's been an absolute success story.
I think George Perkins Marsh that wrote, like, in the mid 1800s, is man over nature or is man of nature? And it's very difficult to disassociate us with nature. And I think that's easy in today's day and age because we live in urbanized settings so much, but we really are of nature. And I try to wrap my head around that thought a lot. Like, doesn't matter where you go, you are in the wild. It's just been drastically conditioned and changed, which is right. Like, I'm watching hawks in my backyard in a subdivision right now. Like, that's still wild what's happening right there. We just have to reconnect with it and tangibly reconnect with it. And I think that's a difficult thing. Anthropogenic effects have been happening on wildlife since there's been man. And we can go find shell mounds in South Florida or find little bays that have been built where they would trap fish and the tide would go out. It's like man has always interacted and been a part of nature. We've got to kind of recapture some of that in our leaving it, as society seems to be doing.
Yeah, when the power goes out and a big storm comes in, or a hurricane or something, or a freeze, things get wild pretty quick for people living in cities. It happens. We're not that far away from it. It's just, we have these, whatever, we won't get into that. But anyway, so anti-hunting, right? They cross borders all the time. They do it on behalf of wildlife. Anti-hunting is I think anti-human. It's also anti-wildlife. So they're doing it. So why can't we? Why can't we fight for wildlife? I think we are actually pro-wildlife with what we do. Interestingly enough, through hunting, through fishing. If things are managed right, if we're using the science, we're using the best available science, we certainly are pro-wildlife. And then sort of the if you zoom out the 10,000 foot view, anti-hunting orgs are fighting a war. I don't know if we're fighting a war. I don't know if we realize it yet, but here's how they do it. Their strategy is, let's go to Washington and intervene. We got the governor that we want. The governor can appoint commissioners that we want, and we can change how wildlife is managed quite drastically. And that's what's going on there. Obviously, we've seen this happen in California. We see it happen in states, where they can get a foothold. But it's important to recognize HUSIS and PETA and whoever else, all these groups, they are a fundraising machine, a very well-oiled, very well-funded, very well-organized machine. They make a ton of money off of, their statements and off of lies and off of saying, this is trophy hunting or, whatever it is that they do. They anthropomorphize animals. They pull at the heartstrings. But my point there is, if they win in Washington and they screw that state up completely, they don't have to really start working on the ungulates and saying we need to stop hunting of elk there or deer there, because if they're successful in getting rid of or severely diminishing predator hunting, that's going to have a big effect on on ungulates, right, on the prey species. And according to science, according to, numbers of animals that are out there, we're going to have to therefore hunt them less. So their work there is done. And then they're going to go to another state. They're going to try it in Oregon. They're trying to literally get rid of everything in Oregon, all types of hunting and farming and breeding of animals and all that. Obviously, we have California. There's a lot here that we can't do. Maybe we're on the rebound right now where we're going to get a few of those things back. It's kind of interesting. But my point there is, when they're done with these states, they're not just going to close up shop.
Right.
These are careers for them. They're making so much money. They will go to your state. So when you see a battle going on in another state, that is your battle. You're just a little bit further away from it right now. But if you get in the fight right now, we are all going to be much, much stronger for that.
Right.
We need to organize now. So then they can't get through these states and then get to states where you traditionally wouldn't think they would have a chance. They would have a foothold in. But they're very clever. And when we mess up, when hunters mess up, when people do things that are stupid, and even on the legislative level, I think that's kind of what's going on in Utah right now. Utah, is a pretty protected state when it comes to hunting. You start doing some stupid stuff there, I don't know. Here's a chance for the anti-hunters to come in and start pulling at heartstrings. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw mountain lion hunting as a whole come up to be banned completely the opposite of what everybody wanted, of what everybody was trying to do. But the process that they went through of not using science to adjust a mountain lion season or a mountain lion take, That's pretty sketchy. Maybe we can get to that later, but yeah, I mean, those were sort of the 5 reasons. I know there's more. There's a lot more. Those are kind of the 5 reasons.
Yeah, I think we should kind of get into those other reasons though, because
Yeah,
a lot of those things that you're saying, well, at least not the last 2, but a lot of things that still like, if I'm that guy that's like, oh, that doesn't affect me, it's easy to kind of write that stuff off. I think one of the main things that you started bringing up, like that, if they succeed in Oregon, let's say, now you lose Oregon hunters. Okay, you just lost a large chunk of however many million that was, or hundreds of thousands that was.
To the state, you mean like to the state?
Yeah,
for wildlife management. Yeah,
you lose to the state, but you also lose it as a seat at the table. Okay, at the conservation table, hunters and anglers have always had the largest seat at the table when it comes to stakeholders and talking about wildlife management and how things are done in the United States, part of the North American model that you had elaborated on earlier. If you take those voices away, if you take that funding away, okay, let's say none of those people they're not active, but the sheer fact that they buy a license, the sheer fact that they pay into the system, to this user pay system that we have, bolsters our seat at the table. So you start diminishing that, and it makes it easier and easier for the anti-hunting establishment, whatever you want to call it, to chip away at the armor, because the armor is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And if bear hunting goes away in one state, and let's say, I don't know, I'm just arbitrary numbers here, 20% of those people that hunt bear only hunt bear. Now, what is that guy going to do? He's going to pick up mountain biking, whatever, something else. He's not hunting bears anymore, so he's no longer in the system. He's no longer there. It's that, that old saying from World War II or whatever. First they came for me, for this guy, and I didn't get involved. Then they came for this guy and I didn't get involved. Then they came for me and there was nobody left there for me. So like that mentality is, I mean, I've said it on my podcast a bunch. I actually, the guy who brought it up first was Sam Ayers, and he put it, perfectly for the situation we were talking about. But it fits this. Like if nobody's there to help the other guy, and that other guy goes away, then that other guy's not there to help you, basically, and it's got to be. And if you look at it even more abstractly, okay, just we're all paying into this federal system that's a collective coffer, right? That money gets diminished. Again, that's going to, make our voice at the table weaker. It's going to make us smaller. And it's just a compounding effect, and it keeps getting smaller and smaller. We see all these people that don't want to do R3. We constantly see this, oh, I don't want to, there's already, the opportunities diminishing. I don't want to bring in more competition. We don't need more hunters, blah, 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 blah. And okay, I understand that, because I'm a hunter. I don't want more competition. I don't want, so for me, my R3 is getting the children, the next generation, that's not necessarily a competition with me directly right now. But you also got to look at it like this. Okay, if you do not want to get involved in recruiting more soldiers into the fight here, then you got to do whatever you can to keep the soldiers that are there intact. And I brought something up on Instagram yesterday about guys who don't want to get involved in lion and mountain lion stuff, like not lion and bear stuff. And I'm like, so because they don't participate in those in that type of hunting. But that's perfect. That those guys are not doing what you do. They're not in direct competition with you. That actually don't even hunt during the same time period as you. Okay, for the most part. But they're your allies. So those are the perfect people you want to like get behind and support. And those bills are the ones you definitely want to, like I just don't understand the mentality of not wanting to help because it's not what I do. Like I don't know. I might be going around in circles here, but
I liked when you were talking about your point, and John, you said something that struck me when I first watched Charles's reel the other day. The federal lands argument is like, to me, such a big deal for all of us. Like that, it's all our money, right? Like every time I see anytime talk of restrictions on federal lands, I'm like, wait a second, your state WMAs, your private lands, whatever, that's a different conversation. But federal lands, like just because you live in Wisconsin or you live in Utah or wherever, like federal lands are mine too. Like I've got a dog in that fight, and we should all care about that. The other thing that kind of resonated with me being a Florida guy when I was watching you guys talk about, why should you care about other states is what I'll classify as a good selfish reason. And that is everybody has dreams about going and chasing stuff, right? You ever on the eastern half of the United States, everybody comes to Florida at some point to go to Disney World or go to Busch Gardens or whatever, Miami. At some point, they have this dream about going and catching a tarpon or going and catching a bonefish or shooting an Osceola turkey or so even a non-hunting state like Florida, if you're listing states for hunting, you wouldn't put us near the top of the list typically, even though I'm a passionate hunter in the state and love it. If you want
I've hunted in Florida a bunch. So
there's nowhere else you can go. If you want to kill your fulvus or your black belly or your mottle, this is the place you got to come to do it. So it's a really interesting way to look at it. Like if you live in Oklahoma and you're a duck collector, you dang sure should take an action in Florida, because at some point to get all your ducks, you're going to have to come through Florida, which is, if I'm a duck collector in Florida, at some point I'm gonna have to go through Oregon to or Washington State to try to get a shot at a harlequin without going to Alaska or whatever. Like it's very important and it's very interconnected. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek that it's a selfish perspective, but if you really are passionate about chasing animals in wild places and collecting experiences, it's really hard to do that. And then there's what Charles said a minute ago, the flip side of that, which is the economic benefit to those states, whatever that comes in. But I think it's not to be overlooked. Like the collecting side, I never knew, was it the spoonbill paddlefish? Like they fish for those in like Oklahoma and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of go do that.
South Dakota.
Pay attention to some of those states now, because it's a thing that I'm kind of interested in doing. And whereas in the past, I would have probably glanced over an action alert from that. Now I'm paying attention to it because it is a thing that, like, man, I don't know, that's a destination for me, but it definitely, if I was in the area or was able to tack on a day somewhere, I'd have to go get after that. And that's pretty unique to me. And I think that's a thing that maybe it was ensconced in some of the other ideas Charles mentioned, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning is this idea of we all have dreams of, like, that's the American thing, right? We have the American dream. We all have dreams about going to places and doing some of this stuff. Your Rio Grande turkeys, your Miriams, your Goulds, your Easterns, like we all have these ideas. There's guys out there that want to kill a turkey in 49 states.
Right.
You want to kill a turkey in 49 states, you better be plugged into 49 states as far as making sure you take, and this is, I don't want to jump ahead, but this is where Howl does such a good job. Like your action alert system and stuff takes 15 seconds, 30 seconds, like, and suddenly I've taken an action in Montana, and suddenly I've taken an action in Utah, and suddenly I've taken an action. Like, really, you guys have put the cookies on the bottom shelf to stay engaged, which is a huge deal.
The other thing, and I don't think I talked about this the other day. So if we look at this from like we're in a war and it's strategy. There's 23 states, I think, right now. I think it's 23. I don't know, somewhere close to that have some form of a right to hunt or fish. And there's various protections. So what that means, let's break that down. You guys help me out here. But a right to hunt, I'll use Montana for a perfect example because this is a good one. They have a right to hunt and fish there. I think that was put in place in 2013. So why this year are we fighting for a right to hunt, trap, and fish? Well, let's back up first of all. The right to hunt just means that, so it doesn't mean you don't have to buy a tag. It's not like a right, like, you know, you have a right to freedom of speech or something like that. It means it's protected in the state. So hunting is going to be a part of what they do in that state, and you will have access to be able to do that. However, it doesn't necessarily mean all forms of hunting are protected, and it doesn't protect all current species in the state. So like you could lose bear hunting in Montana. It also doesn't, and this is really important because this has been one of the other side's talking points. It doesn't mean that Montana Fish and Wildlife can't manage species and present data and say, hey, we need to lighten up on, you know, deer hunting or something because of these numbers. No, that's all still in place. Okay. So now what we're doing now with the action in Montana is an amendment to the Constitution. And what that is to protect all, it adds trapping for one, which is important, and it protects all current methods of take. So now it does protect archery. Now it does protect muzzleloader hunting or whatever types of hunting that they have there. Because essentially, if you have a right to hunt in a state, a group could still come in and fight to get rid of, let's just say, archery hunting. But you'd still have a right to hunt because you can rifle hunt or you can whatever else, right? So this is just a further protection of that. But that's a little in the weeds to understand. But back to what I was going to say, the original point, the more states that we have from a strategy point of view, that means we can we know those states can't be attacked from the anti-hunting orgs. So now we know where we need to focus our efforts. So if Florida gets this, they've just built up a pretty big defense, a pretty big wall around them for protection. It's not protection. It's not 100%, but it's a lot more than what they have right now. So that means we know, you know, it's going to cost, if somebody wants to fight something in Florida and they get it, it's going to cost more resources, more time, more energy. They're probably just going to leave Florida alone and they're going to stick to the states that don't have it. So now we can take another one right off the table. Don't have to worry about Florida now. We don't have to worry about Montana. We don't have to worry about Utah. You know what I mean? All the states that have that. This is so important on our side to build up this foundation. Like that might be the biggest reason for, if we want to make the anti-hunting orgs irrelevant and strain their fundraising machine, this might be the biggest reason why we should all be involved. Like, look at this as a game of Risk. You know, look at it, it's like a board game. It's genius for us to be able to do that. Let's do that. Let's build up that foundation.
Yeah. Long story short, we should systematically be doing that in every single state.
Yeah.
And the more states that get it, the easier it will be to get in other states because, well, not necessarily, but in theory, yes.
I can't remember if we talked about this. I was on with you guys back when we talked about the Return Act with Andrew Clyde, and we talked about like some of the risk with the Pittman Robertson dollars. I think Mark Oliva was on from National Shooting Sports on that episode too. And I think I said in that episode, I forgive me. So forgive me if you're listening and you remember that and I'm repeating. I don't remember. But I think I said something to the effect. So Florida's wildlife agency, FWC, the funding from hunters to that agency is about 2.5% to that budget, which is a shocking number when I tell that to people in the conservation world around the country. You know, you go to Tennessee and I think it's like 85%. You go to Mississippi and it's 90%. You go to Alabama and it's a significant number. If you combine hunting, fishing, and all federal dollars that come back through Pittman Robertson, Dingle Johnson, the WISFR funds, as we call them, Florida's wildlife budget is funded at 15% through all of that money, all in, all the chips on the table. That's not a very big percentage. And what we've seen shift societally down here is that as people move here, they don't engage in these activities. We get 1,000 people a day that move to Florida. So basically we had a city the size of Orlando every year. And it's created systems to share the load in conservation funding, which we've all been supportive of in the past. And, even Mahoney has talked about that and everything else. And when you combine that, you reduce our seat at the table. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be sharing the load funding wise, but when you get rid of that, if you don't have a protection of the right to hunt and fish, the thing that gets used against us in this conversation a lot is social science.
Watch NFL quarterback Carson Wentz and his brother Zach on Tuesdays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern for your fix of a little brotherly competition, football, family, and the outdoors on Waypoint TV. Vote now in Waypoint TV's 2023 Series Showdown. Your favorite hunting and fishing shows are going head-to-head. Visit waypointtv.com to vote and be entered to win a giveaway from Element Outdoors. Cast your votes during each round until the champions are crowned. Get in the game and vote in the Series Showdown. Presented by Expedition Enterprises and Vote Trader. Only at waypointtv.com. Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.
And once that starts to creep in and you get a state where a population shifts and they're not participating in consumptive activities, or as I like to call them, contributing activities where they're paying a fee to do it, that social science, political science is a version of social science. It's a field of it that starts to get applied, and you can politicize, well, wait a second, it's not bringing in that much money for hunting. It's not, and then let's slice it even further, right? Like, how much money are we really making off duck stamps in Florida? You only got 14,000 duck hunters here. So what is it? $5 for your state stamp? That's, quick math on the back of a napkin, 70 grand. Like, that's not a significant number in a wildlife agency that's got almost $500 million budget. Without a right protected and ensconced, we become more and more marginalized in those conversations. And I deal with it every day in a state. I say this all the time. Wildlife management is not partisan, but it is very political, depending on where you're at in the country. And we talk about Oregon and Washington a lot. In Florida, it's very politicized in Florida. And that's because the vast majority of people don't hunt. Even the vast majority of people don't fish, although I think they have a much more casual relationship with that and a much more friendly relationship with that. So if you look at it as a funding mechanism, I'm not going to say it's not nothing, but it's not significant in my state. And so this kind of constitutional amendment, like we're talking about here, solidifies our seat at the table and gives us, frankly, it doesn't give us a win, but it definitely gives a degree shift in the conversation. I was asked recently by our Wildlife Commission to meet with Humane Society. I was asked recently by our Wildlife Commission to meet with folks like that. And it's like, dude, I'll say that to our friends that you and I have in the NGO world, in the conservation world. And they're like, wait, seriously? And that's like the most baffling thing they've ever heard of. And that's because social science is driving those conversations, and that the politicization of wildlife management. Without this protection in place and without a funding mechanism in place, we're kind of out on a limb with no net. So this is a pretty serious net that we're trying to put in place with this type of ballot language that I think is significant for other states moving forward.
Good question, Travis. So you mentioned the numbers on hunting. How does that look in fishing? Because I know fishing in Florida obviously is ginormous.
Yeah, so fishing, we sell about, I want to say it's 1.5 million licenses a year. Okay. But we're very near what's called a max state on the Dingle Johnson side of Whisper. So we're very close to getting the max. So in other words, there's a tipping point. Right. I can't remember our exact number, but let's say we're at 2 million licenses. And if we sold 2.5 million licenses, we would be a max state. At that point, your federal dollars don't increase anymore because you're capped on what you can receive from the feds. So we're almost maxed out on the fishing side because there's so much fishing that occurs here, which kind of disincentivizes recruiting new fishermen.
Right.
You think about it, like pragmatically, there's no revenue stream attached to that.
Wow.
And it's really kind of, like it's, you
get maybe for the department, but for the state, no. I mean, think about, again, like we were talking about earlier, how many boats are sold, how many fishing tackle, how many businesses are associated with. I mean, the last 2 times that I went fishing in Florida with my son, I think I spent $1,000 in a day, because I came from out of state. I was visiting my in-laws, and I went with a guide, and it was just it was a lot of money to go fishing for one day, to have the experience.
We have a thing in Florida where we have a guide's license. So like I do some saltwater guiding as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can buy a guide's license. It's $201 a year. This is separate from the Coast Guard license. This is a guide's license. It's $201 a year. And that covers any client that fishes with me over the course of that year.
Really?
So your fishing license, I think I haven't bought an individual fishing license in a long time. I think it's $18. Non-residents don't have to pay for fishing licenses if they go with guides.
I wish I would have known that, because I bought mine.
The next state instantly tomorrow by doing away. And I'm not saying we should do away with that. I would be interested in a conversation around about. I don't know. I haven't thought a position through on that, but I do know like we leave a lot of revenue on the table just to incentivize the tourism dollars associated with coming to Florida to fish, because it's so much economic. Like you just said, I guarantee you stayed in a hotel, you ate dinner, you bought souvenirs, else. Like the economy benefited, the guide benefited. So really, it's probably not a bad idea because it's incentivizing people to come here.
Right.
Yeah, I'm looking up on FWS right now for Florida. I don't know how they have data for 2023 already. I'm not sure how they're doing that, but it's not much different from 2022. So I'll say it anyway. So paid fishing license holders in total, 1,743,139.
It's almost 2 million.
Resident. Now this says resident fishing licenses, tags, and permits. So that's different than just license holders and stamps. 1,713,983. Non-resident fishing licenses, tags, permits, and stamps. 865,659.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so the gross cost for fishing licenses, 46,938,000 and some change. And it's like resident is 23 million. Oh, wow. Resident is 23,000. Non-resident is 23,914 that in monetary. So just like Colorado,
I was going to say Colorado
non-resident hunting licenses far outweigh. Well, this one isn't far in Florida, but in Colorado, it does far outweighs what the state gets from non-resident hunters as opposed to resident hunters. But anyways, that's just some numbers on Florida there. I absolutely love this site. I didn't know it existed, where they had all this data compiled, and you can just drop down to any state or select all and look at all the numbers you want. I guess this is a new thing, but it's incredible. And that can go all the way back to like 1960.
Yeah, it's a tremendous historical, like you
Man.
can kind of see swings up and down and everything.
Yeah. 1980 was the high point.
Was it?
For amount of hunters. It was almost 17 million. But I guess that can be contested because now we have lifetime licenses and we have free licenses for veterans and different things. So I guess it's kind of hard to, but still.
I've heard now it's 15 million to 18 million. That's kind of a big span. So I don't.
For hunters.
I always go with 16 when people are talking to me. So
you err on the low side, but high.
Right.
In anglers, it's I don't know, 50 some million. I mean, back to our point, if we can, we need the anglers,
right?
Right. We need to be all recognized as sportsmen. And when there's an issue, sportsmen get involved. That would be incredible. I don't know how to get there, but if we really want the numbers, if we really want to outweigh easily the anti-hunting crowd, sportsmen. If sportsmen are one, that's anglers and hunters and even recreational shooters and all that. Man, our job would be pretty easy.
Well, I got a good incentive for the anglers. Two good points. I'm primarily a hunter. I fish occasionally. If you took hunting away from me, I'm going to be fishing a lot more. So there's going to be a lot more competition. That's number one. But number two, once the anti-hunters are done with hunting, you can 100% be sure that they're going to come after fishing.
Have you seen that documentary? I didn't know what it was about. Seaspiracy. Yeah, I'm
I
watching it and I was like, oh,
think
this
I
might
might
be
have seen
good.
posts.
And it just starts basically, it just got to like we just should stop fishing and stop eating meat, stop eating fish meat is
Mhm.
kind of it's kind of what they were getting at there. And I'm like, oh, look at this. They're coming after the fishing, the anglers at
Yeah.
all.
Well, they go after commercial fishing all the time.
Yeah,
It's the
this
polar
was
line
like
guys that haven't gone after a bunch yet, but
they're
We
basically telling people to just stop eating fish like
like
across the board.
seen issues in Florida recently, and this is not. It's a separate issue altogether. But we've seen a couple of years ago there was a viral video going around where a family that was fishing was accosted. They were fishing in Tampa, St. Pete area. They were accosted while they were fishing, and these anti-fishing people took their fish and threw them back in the water. Like they were catching bass or something for dinner, and the anti-fishing people took the bass and threw it back in the water. It went viral, got a lot of run, and then kind of went away. But we've also seen the conflict when you put as many people as you have, and Charles, you're California, like you know this already. Like when you put as many people as you do in areas where people are going to interact with wildlife, you start to see these human interactions around wildlife management. And we've got one going currently around a fishing pier that's a state park in Florida where pelicans are getting entangled. And they're getting entangled in fishing lines. And obviously no one wants to see pelicans get hurt. Or I don't want to see an animal suffer. I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman, but I don't want to see an animal suffer. But it becomes this very kind of dicey situation because then the way to prevent that is to restrict fishing. Well, as pelicans increase, and we know pelicans are doing well number wise, if you look across the Southeast, they were delisted in 85, and then they were downlisted in Florida in the early 2000s, and then again in 2010s. We know that their numbers are going up, and we see these entanglement issues. Well, suddenly Humane Society and Audubon, all those groups are suddenly involved in a conversation on this. And this is like, I'm giving you tangible flesh and bones here. This is a fishing issue that we just addressed at our commission meeting like a month ago, because they wanted to do Skyway Fishing Pier is one of the longest fishing piers in the world. It's the remnants of the old Skyway Bridge. They wanted to close like the last quarter mile of it to what's called a sabiki rig, which is how we catch bait off that pier. I mean, this is a pier that when you think about it, and I don't know you guys that well, but like for me, I grew up fishing off piers. I didn't have a lot of money, a lot of boats. Like a Friday night for me, staying out of trouble was me and my buddies going to the pier and hanging a lantern off the side and catching snook or catching grouper or catching jacks and trash fish. We were out there having a good time. And so when you start to see regulations placed around some of that stuff, and every stakeholder is viewed as equal in the conversation, and we've got social science decisions being made to drive wildlife management decisions, there's not actual science behind it. It gets really problematic. And I'm just saying that's a fishing issue that's right here on the surface for us. Another one I'd give you is like the idea of manatee zones. There's some of those that we've put in just because of pressure. And I'm pro manatee. People will hear this and say, "Oh my God, he's anti-manatee." That's not at all the case. I'm very pro manatee. I love seeing them. I think they're cool. Tourists love them. Fishing people love them when we see them out there. But you can really get in the weeds pretty quickly. We tend to think, oh, it's easy for him to go after trapping. Oh, it's easy for him to go after bear hunting. Oh, it's easy for him to go after shutting down mountain lions or whatever. I'm here to say, like, in a state where you think everybody's okay with fishing, we see kind of fishing pushback all the time. Fishermen are not immune to this conversation. They're not ignorant of this conversation, and it's coming. And it, as our population grows, as people move, you're going to see it become more and more in more and more places. And so I think it's very much a people need to be aware. It's not just on the hunting side. It's a big fishing too.
No, it's huge because, like Charles said, if we can bring them all under the fold here, right? Everybody's working together. Now you just took whatever we said earlier, 15, 16 million, and you just brought it up to 50 million or whatever it is. Well, that's a huge jump, right? If you got 50 million people that are working towards the same goal, and that is protecting the way of life that we all enjoy, it's far more effective.
We got to get Bass Pro Shops and these big places to promote us. That's what we got to do to reach everybody, fishermen and people who, every once in a while do it, kind of a thing. I mean, really, that's what we have to do. And message that correctly.
You know, the big
Build the
difference.
community.
The big difference a little bit, and I don't want to put you guys in a weird situation, but I think about this a lot, is, you know, on fishing, you can have a catch and release side. And there's a subset of the fishing community that kind of views that as almost like a pure form of recreation because they're not having an impact on the fish. But if you look at the mortality rate on that, and I use my dad as example, my dad is a meat fisherman. If he's going fishing, the reason he's going fishing is so that something can come home and be eaten. And so my dad goes fishing in Tampa Bay, you know, 3 times a year. And if he and my mom go and they catch a keeper redfish apiece, they take 6 redfish out of the system on their 3 times a year, you know, versus the guy that catches 50 redfish a day with an 8% mortality or 6% mortality over the course of a week. That guide has killed, I didn't do the math well in my head, but 15, 18, 20. And if you have 100 guides out there, you're killing 15, 1,800, 2,000. I'm not demonizing anybody in that conversation, just to say the idea behind the sports that we're doing is that there is an impact. That's why we pay a user fee on it. And we do that through the lens of consumptive use. And I think it's very important to always keep that. When you take a kid out fishing, it's innate. We talk about hunting being innate, right? Like I've heard you guys talk about this a billion times, that like in our hearts, there's something human. We've talked with Robbie about it on Blood Origins. There's something human about being a hunter. The same thing exists. You take your kid out fishing and let them pull a fish up. And what's the first thing, if they can talk, what's the first thing they ask you? Can we keep it?
Yeah.
Like that's what they want to do. They want to catch this thing. You could just tell it's like ingrained in them, and they're very human. No one taught them that. You take a 3-year-old out there, he catches a fish. He's like, can we keep it, Dad? It's very human. And I just think that's the thing. It's an important.
I got a very good story about that, actually. So I took my son coyote hunting. Well, he's been going coyote hunting with me since he's like 1.5. I used to put him in a backpack, but when he was old enough to have an opinion and talk and everything like that, a matter of fact, it was right when we got back from Argentina, Charles, 3 years ago. I took him coyote hunting, shot a coyote with my bow, and him and I took pictures with it. And I was like, okay, it's March. That fur is starting to get crappy. So I was like, I don't know if we're going to take the pelt. I said, we might just take the skull or whatever. And he was so mad at me. Why are we not taking the meat? Why are we not going to go home and eat it? Da, 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 da. I want to take it home. And he started crying. So finally, I just cut out the back straps and took it home. And we made coyote that night, which was, but that was just to make him happy, because coyote is definitely not my favorite game meat. But it was just that very same thing. Can we take it home? We got this for the family. Why are we not taking this home? It was there, 4 years old or whatever.
The other thing that's pretty interesting is I don't know many hunters that don't fish when it's not hunting season. I know a lot of fishermen that don't hunt, but there is a natural progression there that we see in a lot of people. And actually, not our state wildlife agency, but there's a nonprofit arm of it. They've actually done a program to begin to recruit hunters from the fishing world. Like it's a natural sort of progression, because you're having an impact on wildlife. You're already a contributing user. Mm-hmm. Why not transition over and give hunting a try? And I think I don't want to beat a dead horse. I just think it's innately part of who we are. I think it's
human.
It's human. It's very human. So
100%. So let's talk about the actual bill real quick. You want to give us a rundown about that, Travis? And
so I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Representative Lauren Mello, who is just like, she is a rock star for us here in Florida, and like champion this. I think Senator Jason Brodeur is running the Senate side, but Lauren has been just like charging hell with a water pistol on this bill. And I got to also recognize International Order of Theodore Roosevelt. Like, they've been instrumental in trying to get this language out there. And then always our longtime friends that you guys know, and everybody, SCI and Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation and Delta Waterfowl and groups like that have been CCA for us in Florida. American Sport Fish Association. They've all been really helpful on trying to get the word out and spread this. But what we're talking about is simply a constitutional amendment. So we're talking about two resolutions, a House joint resolution, a Senate joint resolution. And those resolutions are essentially approving ballot language so that on the 2024 ballot, the citizens of Florida could vote whether or not we have a right to hunt and fish. So right now, the thing we're pushing for is to obviously get it in front of committees in both chambers of the House, make it as smooth sailing as possible. And I'll tell you, I was looking at your metrics on just a Howl alert. I think we had over 500 people do it the first day, roughly 500 people do it the first day. And the way you guys have set it up, it's alerting 20 legislators. And I've had legislators text me, and I had one jokingly text me and said, okay, you can call off the dogs now. And he was tongue in cheek because he knows he's on our side. He wants to get this done. I had another tell me, she said, I think I've gotten 7,000 of those emails. And, but the legislators, like, pressure like this works. Pressure like this makes it an issue that's in front of them that obviously people care enough about it. And hate to say squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, that sounds like fortune cookie politics, but it's kind of true. So in this case, we're really trying to get this thing pushed through the House and the Senate so we can then focus on a statewide campaign to get it approved or get it passed on the ballot by getting people out to vote. And we're gonna count again on all those partners I mentioned, on you guys, like, to really help us get this home, because it's so significant. It's so important. Not to go back and rehash, but when you look at our funding and the way that works, and you look at where we're at in the state and the growth of our state, man, this is a big deal. You know, Florida, we talk about conservation all the time. The wildlife corridor is one of our governor's favorite projects. 20% of the Florida wildlife corridor, which is like a green infrastructure down the state, 20% of those lands were acquired with sportsman's dollars, either WMAs or refuges. Sportsmen have long played a significant part in Florida. We're just trying to protect their future in Florida. And so that's why this is so important to us. And kudos to you guys, and thank you to you guys for helping us get word out there about it and be a part of our team.
That's so awesome to hear,
Yeah.
Especially from the legislators, because I don't know if I should get into it or not. Florida set up a little bit differently, and it was very difficult to set this action up to reach the legislators. And I was sort of like, man, I don't know if I want to go live yet, because I don't know if it's going to work. Like, I don't know what kind of replies we're going to get or whatever, but it's working. And I'm seriously so happy to hear that. So yeah, we set it. So when you take action, you reach, I think there's 158. Is that what there is, legislators in Florida?
22
on the Senate?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So they're all in there. When you take action, we could do more, but I'm setting this up a little bit differently because it'll reach people a little bit better. So each time you take action, you're randomly sending an email to 20 of those 158, right? Now, depending on your cookie settings, you could just refresh it and come right back and check, just make sure that the email that pops up, if you're not writing your own email, is different than the last one that you sent out. But if you just come back the next day, take action again, I know that it will be sending out a different email to a different set of 20. But what that, I think, is just it delivers better to the legislators to do it that way. Instead of sending, when you push the button once and it sends the same thing to all 158, and then you do it again, and then it's another message to 158, and we're just kind of mixing it up a little better. But, and I think that it'll just be better on our end. The deliverability is a lot better if we do it that way. But I'm so happy to hear that, though, Travis, because number one, I've gotten back a personal reply from man, what was her name? Let me see her name here.
A staffer?
No, from a senator, I believe. And she said, anyway, I won't be able to find it, but it was like, thank you for letting me know your opinion on SJR and HJR. And I was like, oh, all right. She read this. This isn't a canned message. and she basically said, when this comes up for a vote, I will definitely, consider your words and things like that. She didn't really say where she stands on it, but it was a reply to my email, right? Which was great. The other ones that I've got,
I just said it right now, and I'm getting all the email responses back.
Well, this is important. So you're going to get, each time I've done it, I think I've gotten about 5 or 6 auto replies out of the 20 from senators or reps. But it's important to read that. It's basically saying, hey, we get a lot of emails. I might not be able to get back to you immediately. But if you want to communicate further, oftentimes you'll see here's my staffers' emails. So use those emails, reach out to those people, continue that conversation. Or here's the phone number to reach me. Especially if you live in Florida, because they're going to say, where do you live and all that. And I don't want anybody to lie, but especially if you live in Florida, call the number and just say, hey, you got these 2 bills coming up. I think it's super important for you to support these bills. You can tell your own story. This is a part of my culture or my heritage. This is what I've been doing. You can use some economic numbers, all that stuff, just a short conversation. You could also call after hours, leave a message. If you don't want to talk to somebody, you can still leave a message, say your name, ask them to support this. Call on the weekends. Nobody answers on the weekends. The point is, when there's a ton of people doing this, what Travis just said, they feel that pressure. And this is good pressure. This is good stuff. But let them know you're out there. They hear all the time from anti-hunters. Let them know that we are out there as well.
And what you just said is going back to what we opened up talking about. If you're not from Florida and you're taking this action alert, but if you're John Stallone and you're going to come down here and fish or hunt turkeys or whatever, say, I'm not a Florida resident, but I go to Florida X number of times, I've been X number of times to fish, and this is important to me. I mean, economic value matters a lot. Our governor was on the news last week and made a statement that we just reached our highest tourist year ever. 137 million people visited Florida last year. That's a significant number. And yes, I think there's obviously weight to a resident, but also we have a tourism driven economy still in our state.
Yeah.
And you can connect your non-residents to this particular bill. I'm all for being forthright and honest about it, because that is something that's going to impact not just hunters and fishermen, not just your recreation, but also businesses in the area where you recreate, be it in the Panhandle, be it in the Keys, be it anywhere in between. It's going to impact hotels and restaurants and Uber drivers and everything else going on there, which are all people that vote in their district. So it's a pretty significant chunk when you look at it that way.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. Call if you're a non-resident, and especially if you have that story. If you go there to fish, if you go there to hunt. Yeah, 100%. A very good point. Very good point. Of course. Yeah.
I think someone told me once, there's a guy, he's a personality in South Florida. His name's Rick Murphy, and he's well known in Florida. And Rick told me, I'm going to get this a little bit wrong, but he said, if you broke tourism up into its own industries, fishing would be the 3rd largest industry in the state of Florida, or 4th largest industry. In lieu of tourism, it would be fishing, because it's such a significant contributor. Like, that's pretty big.
That's not nothing.
Oh,
it's not nothing. Like, so as a hunter, with 270,000 hunters and 4 million fishermen, or whatever we said a minute ago, when you combine all in, we ride those coattails. But fishing's significant. I'm a fisherman. Like I fish just as hard as I hunt.
I don't know, like you said earlier, I don't know very many hunters that don't fish.
Yeah.
That's
it
was the same thing, the same argument with the recreational shooters and
hunters.
And hunters is that, I mean, we occupy 20-something% of the shooting world, right? So, because most hunters, I would say, if not all hunters, own firearms. Even bow hunters own firearms, even if it's just a side piece, right? But anyway,
there's also a
don't want to go down that road.
There's also a historical doing the right thing here.
Yeah.
you're a sportsman, like so just like you brought up the gun thing, right? Historically, yes, today 20% of gun money comes through the hunting side and the other 80 whatever percent comes through the shooting sports side. But if you go back 20 years, if you go back 40 years, if you go back 60 years to the inception of Pittman Robertson, the vast majority of the monies came on the hunter side. And we can't just say, oh, well, that's flipped now, so we're going to be dismissive of hunters in that realm. I think the same is very true, and I feel it very heavily as a Florida guy, because historically we carried a lot of weight for land funding, for conservation funding, for agency funding. Yes, that's not the same if you look at the snapshot of the lens today or over the last 8 years or whatever. However, if you looked historically at the water we've carried and you looked at it over modern day dollars, still far and away the biggest contributor to conservation in the state. So what we're asking for now is, hey, have our backs, because we have done so much for this state historically. Have our backs moving forward. Like, that is the right thing to do. If you debate that, man, I don't want to be in business with you. Like, that's kind of like not dealing in good faith. Like, I just that's not cool to me. So I just think it's almost a no brainer. Like, I don't know how you could be opposed to that.
Yeah.
You know, there's some people who look at this and they're like, hunting is a privilege. It's not a right, but they're looking at it from the wrong. I've even seen a few, I think, hunters kind of come at it like this with this Montana thing. It doesn't mean you can just go out and hunt whenever you want. Like, this is my right, out of season, and kill whatever the heck you want. That's not what is being said. I mean, owning a Second Amendment's a right, but you can lose it, right? You can abuse it and you can lose that. But don't look at this way. If you're like, oh, this is my right, and so that means I don't have to pay a tax on it, right? And that means I don't. No, it's just securing the ability and the avenue to hunt and fish in that state that can't be taken away to various degrees, which we talked about earlier. You know, we can improve on that, but this is definitely a good start. It's a huge start.
Thank you guys so much for all your help with it.
Yeah, for sure. So because of that, we have so we've actually sent out 10,700 emails now, because when you do take action, it reaches 20. You know, and I sent it out Monday. It's funny. Some days are just better than others. I sent it out Monday morning, and like it didn't deliver as good as if I send it out like on a Thursday. So funny how freaking analytics work. So anyway, we'll keep doing it. This will end up being more, but I encourage everybody to share that action with all the groups, all your pages, your individual pages. Just get people to get involved. It honestly shouldn't say Florida. I should just hide it. It should be like, I don't know what state it is. You guess. You know, it might be your state, might not be. You know, it's for everybody. You know, don't look at it as, oh, that's Florida, I shouldn't be concerned. This is hunting. It's the North American model. You know, get involved there. Also, you know, back to that Return Act, Clyde, he's got a new bill out, which I don't disagree with. And it's about taking away, I think, the NFT tax. That's the way to go. Yeah, let's do that. Maybe we'll have an action on that and support him. That'd be kind of funny, right?
But yeah, like, leave the conservation dollars alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's just completely dropped that now. The idea of the Return Act and then going after the NFT side of things.
Way to do things, because then you don't end up with the missed shots.
Oh my God, sorry guys.
I
picked up my phone and I must have, when I opened it up, it was still on Instagram. I'm sorry. Apparently, yeah.
Well, anyway, what else? We got anything else?
No, I think that's it. Short and sweet. Put a bow on it.
Oh man, that made my day, Travis, when you said that. People said you can call off the dogs now. Seriously.
I was gonna look. I got texts of pictures of emails, and like, I mean, it was just my phone has blown up. From the supporter side, but also just like, you know, people sending me screen grabs of emails that have been sent to those are legislators that sent me screen grabs.
Right.
Oh man. You have no idea how happy that makes me, honestly.
That's
Awesome.
great.
Yeah, it means it works. That's cool. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm going to stop recording right now. howlforwildlife.org. Go to the action center. You'll see Florida, but look at it as your own state. Take action. It takes seriously 15 seconds to take action. And then you can go on to the other actions as well. Thanks, everybody.
But it ain't my ground. This is God's country.
Follow Cody Kelly, Chris Ashley, and Keith Burgess as they show what hunting is like in small towns across America. Tune into Small Town Hunting, Wednesdays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV.